we don't manage time to try to have balance. We make time for our highest priorities in life. When you make time for them, it's going to force you to be more productive at work. It's this crazy idea that like if we tell ourselves we have, 3 months to do a project, we'll take 3 months. If we tell ourselves we have 2 weeks, we'll do it in 2 weeks.
Hey, what's up? Welcome to the Lifeonaire Show. I'm your host, Jason Wojo. On the Lifeonaire Show, we help people make more, work less, and live awesome lives filled with freedom. And that is freedom of money, freedom of time, freedom of purpose, freedom of, everything, you can imagine. Like we want you to be able to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, as much as you want to do. I am joined by my co-host, Polish Peter. What's up, bro?
Hey, man, I'm excited about this episode because this particular person, man, he speaks our language. And sometimes like we keep talking about it. When somebody else comes in and says, then that's awesome to hear, man.
Yeah. So I'm actually, he gave us a great intro. I'm just going to read it. And by the way, his name is Dr. Travis Parry, Parry, not Perry, Perry. It's Parry. And so Dr. Travis Parry is the #1 best-selling author of Achieving Balance. That's his first book. And Balance Growth, which is his second book, which is on pre-order right now. He's earned a joint PhD in family relations and human development to better understand balance from a family systems perspective. Travis is the founder of the Make Time Institute and has helped thousands of financial professionals in all 50 states to grow balanced businesses. Life in your language right here, man. Love it. He is a sought-after industry speaker and host of the Balanced Growth Show, a FeedSpot Top 25 Financial Advisor podcast. However, his greatest accomplishment in life is becoming the husband to his beautiful and talented wife of 20 years and father of their amazing 7 children. Dude, 7 children. That's awesome.
I think there's one on the way, too.
I know, right?
In the podcast.
Yep. Please welcome to the podcast, and let's go to our interview right now with Travis Parry. You're going to learn about how to think about balanced growth in your life, a balanced business, balanced health. We're going to talk about how to achieve all of these things and not just be unidimensional, right, man?
Yes. If you're working more than 40, 50 hours a week, you need to listen to this episode. If you feel like unbalanced in life, you're like stressed in life, something is off, you should listen to this episode.
Yeah.
If you have starting a company or you have a company where you don't know how to get yourself in this way where you can actually flow and grow in business and make money, and how you actually go and have a conversation and spend time with your wife and the kids and all these things in between, this is the episode to listen to.
Love it, man. Let's go right now to our interview with Dr. Travis Parry. Travis, welcome to the Lifeonaire Show. Thanks so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Man, you are super aligned with what Lifeonaire teaches, and that's why I'm really excited to dive into our conversation. Before we do that, though, and this, you have a very special message for business owners and people that are really, out making their own path. They're paving their own way through life. I'm curious, like how you got into this niche of helping people and where this came from.
I was really interested in money. I was fascinated by it as a kid. I was very entrepreneurial. And so I decided early on that I wanted to be, something to do with money. And I actually had a paper out. This guy that I was collecting, and he paid his bill, and during the middle of the day, I was like, hey, have you ever thought about, becoming a financial advisor? That's what I do. Like, he gave me his whole spiel about how he day trades. And so I had in my mind since a kid, like, I want to do something with money. I didn't know what financial planners or advisors really did until I made it to college. And by the time I got there, I was recruited to one of the top really 4 or 5, financial planning firms that had a fantastic internship program. Involvement in that program really helped me see into individuals' lives. I felt like I was a therapist half the time. I felt like I was a counselor, a salesperson, and I had to be this really knowledgeable financial advisor about money. And I started to see how most people, they just don't make time for the things that really matter. Like a lot of times, like what their goals are, their life, strategies to building wealth. A lot of it is like an afterthought. And they get so caught up in their own work. So as I was working with all these entrepreneurs, I realized that yes, money as an asset, it's important to manage, but time was even more important of an asset. That's what they couldn't get back. That is what they, really were struggling with. At the same time, my father, who was 49 years old, young, healthy, rode his bike hundreds of miles a week on the road and on the dirt, suffered a major heart attack and died on a mountain bike ride.
Jeez.
Just normal, ride. He was going intense. He was going hard. He had no idea that he had 90% buildup in one of his arteries. They call it the widowmaker because there are no other symptoms. And really, heart attack a lot of times is the first symptom. So, that really floored us. And again, I was a financial advisor at the time, so I was super involved in helping my family and my mom kind of rebuild life. It affected me so much that I actually decided to really study stress, study health, study mental health, and how all of that relates to each other. And, long story short, I got a master's in psychology and went on to do a PhD in human development and family relations, where a lot of, quite honestly, stress comes from, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I really wanted to analyze that and figure out, well, what's going on here? Why is there so much stress? Why do we hold on to it? Why don't we, deal with it correctly, especially as men? We don't manage stress very well at all. A lot of us are, taught to do things very much in the toxic masculinity. I am pro male. I'm pro, masculinity is important, but the way that we tend to deal with stress as men tends to be harmful. So I don't know all the details or how my father actually, died, how it all built up, but it's a combination: diet, genetics, stress. And at the end of the day, I looked at balance, and that was really the problem. The problem is most people are chasing money. They are not managing it well. And they come to a financial planner like, here's my stuff, help me. The people that really get value from a financial planner have already made it a lot of the times and have bigger problems like estate tax or estate planning, taxes, a valuation of their assets, those kinds of things. But the great majority of Americans don't engage a financial planner because they're struggling with, how do they manage everything now? How do they get their business to line up? So that whole balance of time between working and taking care of yourself, that's that intersection that I call balance. And that's where I landed. And I realized that, shoot, most of my clients needed this, but also the financial planners that this industry really attracts, they suffer from it 3 to 5 times more than the average American. So that's where I started. I started helping financial advisors.
So you really, when you say balance, you're talking about like all of the components of life kind of fitting together in a way that are cohesive and coherent. They don't conflict with each other. They're not. So you kind of have, you're healthy. You're managing your stress. Your money is, and your financial situation is balanced. Like, so it's really, I'm almost envisioning one of those like Bosu balls at the gym where you can go in any direction, but you got to stay centered in all these different dimensions.
I like that. I've heard on my podcast, I asked people to give me some analogies, and I've heard everything, but that's a good one. I haven't heard that
yours,
one
man.
yet.
You can take it.
That came out of your mouth, Vojo? That's surprising. Okay.
I like it. I think the concept of balance, and I have this for those that are, watching, my book cover, Achieving Balance, has an imbalance in this whole, message here. And I think that's the important part, is that we are living in imbalance every day. What people tend to think is balance is this crazy notion that we can somehow do it all and be everywhere and have equal time in all aspects of our life. That is not possible. That's not balance. So people will come out and say, I don't believe in balance. Well, no, you don't believe in the notion of balance that, is kind of prevailing, the whole work-life balance thing. Okay, that doesn't work. What is balance then? Well, we've interviewed 250 plus entrepreneurs, financial advisors, and I've done the research on this at a PhD level. We found that people feel balanced when they're living their highest priorities in life.
Mm.
So we got to work, right? And you got to love what you do, or else it's gonna be painful. But you don't love every aspect of it. You try to minimize those things you don't like to do and delegate and be productive. However, at the end of the day, if you're working 90 or to 100 hours a week, a lot of my clients that I start, working with them, that's where I find them. They are workaholics, and they justify, well, I'm working for the family and I enjoy what I'm doing. All of that said and done makes the health take the backseat, relationships fail, your spirituality, you don't have time for it anymore. Relationships with friends, helping out in the community, it all just becomes centered around work. And quite honestly, it's a financial addiction. And that's where it stems.
So let me just rewind for one moment. I really want everyone to hear what you said and how you defined balance, because it is different than the average way. So most people think like, hey, they're thinking of their 4 food groups. I have 25% this, 25% that, and it's balanced, or it's a balanced meal. You're saying no, balance means you're living and you're pursuing your highest purpose. Is that what you described it as?
Absolutely. We define it as 10 areas of life at the Make Time Institute, and everybody has a different wheel of life and different categories. Doesn't matter. What I look at is these 10 and say, you define them. You tell me what those mean to you. Because everybody's living in a different time and season situation in life. But the reality is most people tell me their health and their relationships. Those are the top areas of life. So if you are working too much and you're avoiding making time for those areas, then you're not living your purpose. So the Make Time Institute was born out of this idea of the Make Time method that no, we don't manage time to try to have balance. We make time for our highest priorities in life. When you make time for them, it's going to force you to be more productive at work. It's this crazy idea that, like, if we tell ourselves we have, 3 months to do a project, we'll take 3 months. If we tell ourselves we have 2 weeks, we'll do it in 2 weeks. And, if we tell ourselves we only have 30 hours a week to work, we'll work 30 hours a week. I work 25 hours a week. We take 16 weeks off, family vacation, fun, travel. We homeschool our kids. We have a very laid back, different type of, lifestyle. And we enjoy it. We have a big family. We have 7 children, 1 on the way. This is the lifestyle that we've chosen. In order for me to be present and be with my family as balanced man, I've decided I only work 25 hours a week. And in those 25 hours, I am super productive, but I also have boundaries. I know when I need to say, I'm out, I'm done. And that's the important part. The overarching thing is I make time for my scriptures, my meditation, my reading. I make time for church. I make time to run and be in the gym and ride my mountain bike. Those things that are important for my spiritual and physical health. I make time to be going on dates with my wife. I take her out of town. We do amazing things with the family. We do road trips like that. At the end of the day, those are the most important things in my life. And what I find is a lot of people who they just kind of, they justify the work. Well, I'm providing. I'm doing this for my family. Well, yeah, but if your family never sees you, what's the point?
Yeah. Right. Do you think that most people that lack balance, is it because they haven't spent the time to think about what is most valuable to them? Do you think it's because they are lying to themselves? Do you think it's,
fear?
Is it fear? Is it ego? Like, why do people? Because I'm imagining right now we have listeners and viewers who are hearing what you're saying. And they're like, that sounds great, but whatever. Like, but whatever.
Right. Oh, of course.
Right. So, like, why do you think so few people are actually achieving balance?
So, in all of the research we've done with entrepreneurs and business owners, financial advisors specifically, most people are out there like on social or they're attending a course. They get tips, tricks, and hacks, right? Oh, check out my latest hack and tip about time management. Most do not have a system. I am a systems guy. Every great business is built on a system. The E-Myth, Michael Gerber, I was trained by his coaches. I know inside and out how to establish and create great systems. People talk about discipline all the time and delegation and whatnot, but unless you have a system, you and your discipline it's not enough. It isn't enough. Your willpower, not enough. But if you follow a system, the system will run it. If you want to build a business and delegate to other employees, build a system first that employee can now utilize and run with. Then the work is easy. So when it comes to managing time, most people don't have a system. So they're just kind of going, well, I time block, or I do some processing, or, I make sure that my assistant takes care of all of my schedule. Well, that's fine for work. And that's fine for being productive. But productivity isn't enough. You need to have an ideal calendar for all areas of life, for all aspects. Otherwise, it's exactly what they say. If you don't have a plan, you're just planning to fail. If you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. If you do not have an ideal calendar for all areas, then you're just likely just kind of being a reactive agent to what's happening in life. Now, you might have an appointment calendar. I'm not saying that. Like, everybody has a calendar. They've got Gmail, Apple, Outlook, whatever. We've got software out the wazoo. Like, we live in time of AI. We could have a robot manage our calendar these days.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not being proactive. That's simply putting things into your calendar to do. It's a to-do list. It's tasks. It's emails. It's not saying, here's what I'd like my life to look like. And now I'm going to match up my appointment calendar in all areas to look like that. That's what we teach at the Make Time Institute. And we have a 4-step system that focuses on how to do this. And I can explain that really quickly if you'd like me to. I could get into that.
Yeah.
So
bring it on.
Yeah, I call this lift because a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, they're stuck in what I call the workaholic trap. So how do you lift up and get out of it? L is the first letter of the acronym for lift. That is, live your values. And I think you mentioned this, Jason. You're like, is it because they don't know what's really important? I think they know what's really important. And that's also part of the stress, is if you know it's important, but you're not living it. Psychologists call that cognitive dissonance. You have two competing thoughts at the same time. That actually causes stress in most individuals. And we subconsciously, throw that into our arteries. Okay. That's where it goes. Stress helps to build up this sticky plaque in our arteries. So as I looked at that, and I know that people know what's important, like if they had a gun to their head and said, I've got to choose this or this, they're going to know what's most important to them, but they have never written it down. They've never taken the time to actually put pen to paper and say, this is what I stand for. This is who I am. And I call those values. Well, values, man, that's a word that gets thrown around typically in conservative circles because we talk about it as conservative values or whatnot. It's not that. A value is something that you stand for, a principle you know to be true that guides your life. If I was to ask Jason, right now, what describes you as a husband and father? Like, you would give me characteristics of what your kids would hope, they think of you, right? That is a characteristic or descriptor of your value. So if I want to be a loyal husband, loyal is the value. Instead of creating a goal to, talk nice to my wife or take her on dates, which those things are important. Those are just action steps. A value is a lifelong journey in becoming. Therefore, it's a lifelong goal. It's who you want to become someday, even if you're not right now, but you want to. Okay, so that's your value. So then how do you live that goal? Well, now you say, okay, what can I do in a year to be more loyal? What can I do to be in a month? Oh, in a week? And you focus on the value of becoming that person. And over time, you will. Over time, if you focus on it long enough, and then you actually take action toward it, you will. This is where the ideal calendar comes into play. And I mentioned it earlier. I believe in automatically achieving your goals. What? How do you do that? Well, you make time for each of those goals now that are helping you become the value by placing it into your calendar. You say, I'm going to spend 10 hours a week with my spouse. I'm going to spend 15 hours with my children, whatever it is, 40 hours at work, right? Be intentional about it because we only have 168 hours in a week. That is equal. We all have that equal. That's equality, time equality. We have it. How we use it and what we do with it, that's our own game. So being very proactive about it, you set time for each of these areas to now you have automatically time built in.
Hey guys, we get right back to our episode, but there's something really important I want to tell you about, and that is this. You don't have to choose between having a great life and a great business. You can have both. We have 2 different events, in fact, to help you do just that. Our Get a Life Getaway is our proven process. We've been doing this over just about 15 years now of walking you through the process of creating your own personal life vision, your Lifeonaire vision for the ideal life that you want to live. And by the way, this isn't pie in the sky approach to living. This is a tangible, strategic way to really figure out exactly what you have to do and what things have to be in place for you to live that vision, and so that you can make this a reality. Now, the second part of that component is the second part of the formula is the business builder workshop. So this is where now finally you can have a business that doesn't absolutely destroy your life, and you can make the money you want in the amount of time you want. You can have fun. It can fulfill vision element items. You can remove yourself from the day-to-day and the minutia. So you're only doing the things that are most enjoyable to you and that you're best at, right? Can you imagine what that'd be like to get to enjoy and wake up every day loving what you get to do in your business and making money hand over fist? Like, it's just an amazing combination. So I want to encourage you to go to the Get a Life Getaway and the Business Builder Workshop because they're really a 1-2 punch combination to help you get the ideal life and business that you dream about. Now, here's the even cooler part, Peter. We have a very special promo for them. Tell them about that.
Well, because you guys are a loyal listener, because you're listening to our podcast and listen to my English and his English all the time, here's what we have for you guys. Head over to lifeonaire.com, click on the events tab at the top of the page, pick the event that you want to go to, go to the checkout page, and in the promo code area, type in podcast, 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 hit apply, and guess what you're going to get? You're going to get 50% off. That's 50% of the ticket price, the regular ticket price that majority of the people out there who don't listen to our podcast don't know about it yet get to pay, but you get to pay only 50% off. So head over there right now, get to this event, and I can't wait to meet you. Come up to us, say hi to us, introduce yourself, tell us you found us on the podcast. We would love to talk to you and show you how this vision process really creates miracles in people's lives.
Man, one last thing is, I don't know when you're listening to this episode right now, but I don't know how long we're going to keep this discount up. I don't know how long this promotion will be valid. So go and do it right now to make sure you get that 50% savings. We'll see you at an event soon. Let's get back to the episode.
What most people tell me when it comes to relationship problems, financial problems, health problems, I don't have the time. What they're actually saying is, I didn't make the time. And because of that, they're suffering and they're not achieving their goals. It's causing stress and they're not becoming who they want to be. The third is F. The third letter F is family support. So that F letter acronym stands for family support. This is where you involve your family. Hey, kids or spouse, this is what I want to do with my time. And what I do, and I suggest, is that you actually have a family council at least once a month, hopefully once a week. You gather your family, you talk about where are you all spending your time? What are we doing? You go over your calendar. You're very proactive about where the kids are spending their time doing this, going to soccer games, this and the other. And it's crazy. I understand. Like, that takes a lot of work. We've been doing it for 19 years now. If we didn't do this, our lives would be an absolute mess. Just catastrophe. Having a big family is like running a business. You delegate, you have systems, you have, chores, obligations, and all these things. And
so that's why you have 7 kids.
Yeah, that's right. They run everything.
Right.
I wish. I don't have a farm, but that would be nice. No, I think though there is something to that. You give them responsibilities. You let them learn by doing. Like our son, he runs the garden. He is 12, and he's brought in more cauliflowers, zucchini, tomatoes potatoes I've ever seen.
Wow.
Because he's really excited about it. He comes home and he runs to the garden, he takes care of it and comes back in. I'm like, it's because you're putting in the time, kid. Like he knows what he's doing. Anyway, so part of that is you want to help the whole family to have balance. If you have a child that's out of balance, like last night I was up half the night with my daughter because she was sick, like it affects me. I'm a little bit groggy this morning. I'm not 100% energy, and that's okay. We deal with it. And I'll go home and take a nap this afternoon. But if that's a continual problem of being out of balance with a child, that'll affect the whole family. So the whole family has to buy in. And here's the thing: if we treat workaholism like an addiction, we'll also understand that no addict succeeds on his or her own. No addict does. They may, for a time, be able to discipline themselves into something better, but then they relapse because it's an addictive cycle. I've studied addiction, and I know that workaholism can be an addiction. I'm not saying if you're working too much that you're an addict. No, that's a symptom. But if it is an addiction, if you work more when you're stressed, if you have low levels of work enjoyment when you're at work, like there's a lot of different symptoms. You're working more than 60 hours a week. Those are symptoms. But if we treat it like an addiction, most addicts that go to a treatment facility, when they come back into their home environment, if the family is not on board with their new changes, they're going to go right back to where they were. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So the family has to be on board with, this is dad or mom's schedule, and we want to help them. And the parents need to help the children by helping them have balance in their own lives. They can start them young. Help them achieve their own most important goals through their life. They're the coach. They should be there. Like that's what a parent is. It's a coach. Lastly is T for teamwork. Teamwork is between now the couple. This is where, if you're married, it's super important. If you're not married, don't tune out. Have a friend, a coworker, someone that you can, have some accountability to. But if you are married, the most important figure in your life is your spouse, period, end of story. And that individual can help you to stay accountable. So what do? You share your goals with each other. You share your goals and you help support each other on your individual goals. Dr. John Gottman is the foremost researcher on relationships in America. He is the best. He can tell a couple if they're going to divorce with a 97% accuracy over the next few years. Okay. He has a system. He knows it. He knows his stuff. He says the most important thing in a marriage is to share each other's goals and dreams and be supportive of each other and their goals and dreams. So the next thing you do is you set goals as a couple in your relationship, in your money, as parents. You have shared goals that you work toward together. That in and of itself is where I did my dissertation research and found that when couples did that, when they had shared values and goals, they were happier psychologically, they felt better in their relationship, higher marital satisfaction, and their finances were more stable. So that's LIFT. That's the LIFT formula. Live your values, have an ideal calendar, family support, and teamwork.
Love it, man.
Yeah, I love that analogy and how you use that lift to describe how to work this system basically that you have created. So here's my question: as an entrepreneur sitting here, there's probably some entrepreneurs sitting here listening to this podcast and hearing you talk about the lift, and a lot of it is related to the family. You're talking about working 25 hours a week, and if I'm sitting and working 60 hours a week or whatever it might be, and you're talking about family and all those things, how is this helping me more money? I mean, think about some of the conversations out there are like, you got to 10x your life. You got to go and, go and push and do as much as possible, those kinds of conversations. So how is this actually translating to helping me grow and make more money?
Yeah. So it's interesting. Again, it's this idea that somehow we have to work 60 hours. There's a lot of great research, especially out of Scandinavia, which, just because I am Scandinavian doesn't mean I have some type of affinity or relationship there that is more important to this topic. But a lot of 4-day work weeks right? We're finding Iceland, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, they've tested a lot of this out and found that that's actually way more productive than working, the American 5-day week. If you look at it, and we can boil down the 4-day work week. We can look at the 5-day work week. If we were to say, well, gee, I'm working more in 5-day work week. I'm working 50 hours, whatever. Well, if you're working in a 4-day work week, what comes down to it is energy management. It's energy. Okay. I find a lot of entrepreneurs really struggle. They're like, they want to work 35, 40 hours a week, but they're working 60, but they can't see how that is possible. How can I actually do it? I think, Peter, that's what you're saying. It's like, how is that actually possible? Well, they've made it possible by simply just saying, we're not working Fridays. We're only working Monday through Thursday. And I'm not saying you work 12-hour days Monday through Thursday because, we can do that. But you're going to be out of energy. By 3, 4 o'clock, you're going to be dead. And then what use are you? You might as well pack it up and go home. I'm big on energy management. So how do you do this? Now it comes down to, don't worry about what Travis wants. Travis wants to work 25, 30 hours a week. You do what's best for you. If that's 40, 45, fine. But if you're at 60 and you want to get down there, I suggest looking at where you're spending your time actually at work. Most people have never tracked it. They just go out to work, they check their email, they do their calendar, they talk to their team, they do their appointments, and then they get home when they can, right? But if they actually track where they're spending their time, they will have a different experience. Just by tracking, I've seen people make life changes. They went, oh my goodness, I can't believe I check my email that much, or I'm on social that much, or I waste this much time. I'm going to make changes. And if you give that tracking to someone like your accountability partner or a coach, you don't want to report that you did something bad. It's kind of like, if Jason went out and was like tracking his food intake, you're going to think twice about, having the donuts and the ice cream or whatever, if you're trying to be, physically strong. Okay. So there's an important aspect here in research that just by asking a question is an intervention. Just by asking yourself a question, what have I done the last 30 minutes, is an intervention. It is starting to change. Now, once you have what you mostly do during an average week, what I suggest, and I write about this in my book, Achieving Balance, what I suggest is that you find your sweet spot. Anybody play baseball, hockey, tennis? There's a sweet spot in the bat. There's a sweet spot in the hockey stick. There's a sweet spot in the tennis racket when you hit the ball, the puck, whatever. And when you do that, how does that feel, Jason? You're just like,
oh, it's like effortless. It's just like the least amount of effort in the thing. Yeah, it's you connect.
Exactly. Golf, same way. Just almost these swing sports that like you can feel like when you make a connection. Okay, it's the same thing at work. When you're in your sweet spot, you feel like what psychologists call flow. You're like, wow, like that was easy. It wasn't necessarily easy. It was just so fulfilling. Fulfilling is the word. And your skills match up with what you're doing and you can just enjoy it so much. There's a ton of enjoyment. So what I suggest is that you find the top 5 activities that really are most important. And that just by living in and spending 80, at least the Pareto principle, 80 to 90% of your time in those areas will dramatically change your productivity. What you do is you find those top 5 by doing a prioritization exercise that I outline in the book, basically asking yourself, if I could only have one, and you pair each of these up against each other until you find the top 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. You might just look at the list and like, oh, these are most important. And you might know that right off the bat, but be careful because some people just choose the things that pay them the most money. And that's not what I'm talking about here. That's not what I'm talking about. However, the things that give you the most fulfillment typically will be the things that will pay you the most because you enjoy doing them. Make sense?
Yep. Yeah. You're it's almost like you're in your genius, in your flow, right?
Yes.
In your higher self.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it, Peter. And so when you're in that flow, in your genius, you're in a state where work is enjoyable. And everything below that mark, I suggest to either look at it and say, do I actually need to do this? If you don't need to do it and no one on your team needs to do it, delete it. Get rid of it. Stop doing it. If you don't need to do it and your team needs to do it, then delegate it. But before you delegate it, you might look at automation. And I know this is a hot topic. I use automation all the time. I've been using it for years. This is nothing new, actually. There's been automation developed software for over a decade that we've been using. So automate it first. If it needs to be a human to do it, then delegate it to a team member. All right. So delete, automate, delegate. And the last one is if you can't do all those other things, you can't get rid of it, you can't delegate it, you can't automate it, then minimize it. Ask yourself in this task, what is the most important aspect that I can do that has to be done by me? For example, if I was a financial advisor and I was building out all these financial plans, well, do I actually need to input the data? Do I need to run the reports? Do I need to prep? Do I need to follow up? No. Have a team member do as much of that as possible. And maybe the last activity is you just approving it. And it takes 5 minutes or 10 minutes. But that is the high level minimizing versus, well, I'm just going to do it myself because no one else can do it as good as me, right? That's the old school mentality that you can't delegate. You can't run a system and you're not going to be productive. So people say, well, I tried time management. It doesn't work. Baloney. You probably just aren't in your sweet spot. You're not proactive about it. And then you're not using the system to delegate everything else. Now you draw a line underneath your sweet spot activities and you say, what could I do to delete, automate, delegate, or minimize these activities? So that might be the 20%. You might still have to hang on to some of those, but it should be 10, hopefully, no more than 20% of your time. The 80 to 90% should be in your sweet spot. And once you're there, you'd be amazed how much time you don't need to work. Now, I get it. If you're not the entrepreneur, you're not the business owner, and you don't run your own schedule, then what do I do? Well, you work your hours or you work your salary, approved schedule or whatever, and you just be the best employee ever because your boss, your manager, whoever it is that you're working for will be like, holy cow, what are you doing? How are you so incredibly productive? And then they're going to want you to tell everybody else, and they're going to want you to train. And before you know it, you're running the place. So what I'm saying is like most people, they're just getting by. They're doing the minimum and they're not dedicated. And there are those rare few employees who they love what they do. They're dedicated, they're productive, and they shine. So this isn't just something for business owners, but for business owners, because you run your own time, you can decide, shoot, I want to carve off 10, 20 hours. I haven't even talked about wasted time. I haven't even talked about, well, what are you doing? Are you on social? Are you on, your text messaging? Are you dealing with addiction? Are you watching TV while you're, working with clients? Like there's all these other bad habits that as you track your time, you will discover, and you can minimize that.
Yeah, man. Well, listen, we're running out of time here, but I have a question that is going to kind of set up actually something you are in the process of answering right now, and that is this. So this sounds great from someone's perspective as they're thinking of the size of their current business, or perhaps, hey, this works for small businesses, but what if I want to grow? What if I want to scale? Is balance still possible with a larger business, a more involved business? And you just tell us a little bit about how you're going about answering that right now.
For sure. I appreciate it. And thank you for the time on this, guys. So I actually had a lot of business owners come back to me after we helped them to really achieve balance, which, that they feel like they're in their flow. They're doing well. Their businesses are improving, but now they want to grow. And here's, Peter, I think you mentioned it. Fear. Fear is a big part. At the end of my book, Achieving Balance, I talk about fear. And I boil it down to fear of failure, fear of success. Those are the two main branches in the tree of fear. Okay. That's kind of my analogy. And there's all sorts of offshoots that come from that. But most who come to me and they're like, I'm not sure how to do this, they're afraid they'll lose their balance. Okay. Or they're afraid that if they scale, that somehow they're going to have to put their balance on hold for a while. and then they're not going to come back to it. Does that make sense? You've heard that.
Yeah.
Well, you've just got to hustle.
Oh, yeah.
You've got to get in the morning with a coffee and out with the trash. And that mentality, it might work for a day or a week, maybe even a month. But I'm sorry, I even know accountants who say, well, for 6 months, I'm working 90 hours. And I know others who say, forget that, shine that. I figured out how to debunk that system. I delegate, I create systems, I have teams. I don't work 90 hours and kill myself anymore during tax season. Like, there really is no real excuse. And every industry has their struggles. Lawyers, accountants, financial advisors, we all struggle with this in some respect. Entrepreneurs in general, we can't turn it off sometimes. But I'm telling you, you can scale and keep your balance. I use a method that is foolproof for any entrepreneur. And that is, you guys are doing this right now. Actually, you have a podcast. I have a book. I have a podcast. I speak on stage. I try to use my influence to attract organic clients to me. I've paid for 0 Facebook ads over the last 3 years since the pandemic. And we have done more business. We've doubled and tripled our business every single year using organic methods. Well, what is that method? I call it inviteology. And I have a book that I'm writing right now called Balanced Growth. It's out for pre-order. You can get it at balancedgrowthbook.com. You can get that pre-order right now and a bunch of bonuses. But what it involves essentially are a few steps that if you can, learn to live them. First is just keeping that balance of having the lift formula in place. That's number 1, right? Have balance. 2 is, once you're productive and you've got great balance, then you need to identify who is your ideal client. Oh, okay, I've already done that. The riches really are in the niches. So niche down, become a specialist. I work mainly with financial advisors, financial professionals, or any, a business consultant that is somehow related to that industry. Okay. And that's my niche. That's who I serve. Travis, aren't you limiting yourself? Not at all, because they love me. They know that I'm there to serve them. I learn everything I can about them. And I have been in their shoes. Most of these professions, I've actually spent some time as an insurance agent, planner, et cetera. So they like me. There is an instant relationship. So niche down. Once you've identified that niche, I use inviteology, which is basically inviting people to be a part of the book creation, to be part of the podcast as a guest, to be part of a newsletter, to be part of an event. I interview them, our team interviews them, and the ones who have problems, who have needs, they will actually raise their hand. Hey, you're the balance guy. Can't you help me with this? And we say, sure. Half of the battle is just getting on a Zoom call, on a phone call with your ideal client. So all of these things that I do, when I did my book, Achieving Balance, I interviewed 250 plus financial advisors and planners, and dozens of them became our clients. I spoke on stages for thousands because of it. I've been on podcasts all over the podcast sphere and blogs and everything, because I niched down, I interviewed them, and they wanted more. Okay, obviously you need to have something that's really great. So I say you need to have a transformational system, not just a good experience, not a great service, but it's got to be transformational. Otherwise, you won't keep your client forever, and they will not become raving fans. They will not spread the word for you. You want that. You need that for your business to succeed. So we've done very, very well with this system, and I believe that inviteology is really what we're called to help people to do, to scale their business and use platforms to become a better influencer, and be able to use that influence to attract their ideal clients organically.
That's awesome, man. Give that book link again.
Yes, it's balancedgrowthbook.com. You can also go to Travis Parry, Parry.com, and you will see the link for Achieving Balance, for my podcast, and also for that book as well. But balancedgrowthbook.com is the latest. AchievingBalanceBook.com is the first book we were mentioning there with the lift formula.
Awesome, man. Well, man, thank you for some awesome content. And by the way, as you're talking, I'm like, man, there's so much congruence with the message we share as well that I know our audience will really resonate with what you're sharing now, man. So thank you for being on Lifeonaire Show.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Peter.
Man, this guy is speaking our language, man. Like how fortuitous, how serendipitous that we have this guy on the podcast, because I know that our listeners are familiar with this kind of messaging already, and to hear it from another angle, from a different perspective, from someone saying things a different way, it can kind of hit you differently. And it reinforces what we're already kind of pursuing here, which is like, listen, business is wonderful. It's great. It's fun. It's all these things, but it's not the be all end all. And it's part of a bigger system, a bigger ecosystem, a bigger picture of, our health, our relationships, our personal life. All of these things need to kind of integrate rather than compete with each other.
Yeah. I like how he defined, what does actually mean to have balanced life, because a lot of people have a different way of looking at it. I think it's misconstrued on what balanced life actually means. And if you're looking towards your higher self, your gifting, your biggest values, that you start looking and having that part of the balance, all of a sudden you start living in that flow, like we talk about, your genius, right? And then you actually start pouring into your family. And first, he talked about your wife being the number one partner in your life, right? Pouring into that, and then your kids, and then business starts to grow. So I think, from someone who is, working a lot, getting down to that balanced, way of living, like he's doing 25 hours, me and you are in a similar boat kind of a thing. So that's possible. You start seeing that totally it's possible for you to live that way. And then when you are living that way and you want to grow, then, when he's talking about the next book that he's writing, it's possible for you to grow with the balance, not go kaboom, you know what I mean? Because that's, I think, a lot of times for those entrepreneurs, it's a fear, like you mentioned that towards the end of the episode, that if I want to grow, I'm worried that I'm going to lose the balance that I've created, that I've been able to strive for, that I went after, and I did everything in my power to get to this, whatever the balance I have in life, and now I want to grow. So it's like this battle inside that's happening, like, okay, I shouldn't grow maybe because I'm going to lose balance. And what does that look like? And those kinds of things.
Well, one thing that I like, so basically, there's a lot of overlap. We teach people to create a vision, right?
Yeah.
And your vision is that blueprint of what your ideal life looks like, and which your vision is also a built-in accountability tool, along with people. People is he mentioned your family and your spouse especially. That accountability from both of these sources really helps you stay on the straight and narrow as far as what you say your priorities are, and to make sure that you are in alignment with what you really say is most important to you. And so I love that he said, you set your values and then the actions kind of follow from that. Mm-hmm. And you'll become that kind of person who's doing those kinds of things, and then you'll be consistent with that. Now, when it comes to working less and scaling your business, what I kind of think of it as is your priorities haven't shifted, right? But now you have to overcome what I believe to be mental and technical skills as a business owner. And what that means is you have to get over, you brought this up really well, is the fear. He mentioned his, two branches of the tree of fear, and as an example, success and failure. But you also need to learn the tactics of how to actually do that. And I think, we talk about this a lot, is elevating yourself to the position of a business owner and not an operator necessarily. And so you kind of got to transition mentally and in the way you run the business.
Right. As an entrepreneur, I think the first thing that you got to do is figure out this thing between the 2 ears, and how does that align with your values and those balance and things like that. And what just occurred for me is I'm really excited, because as we're recording this, next we're going to go into the Business Builder, and we're going to be talking about this kind of stuff, because that is so important in order for you to grow your company, grow your business, and grow your family life, your personal life, And vision is the number one thing. You got to do that. If you're listening to this podcast, you haven't written your vision now, go and write it out. What do you want your life to look like? Because without that, how are you going to be able to create what that balance looks like? How are you going to be able to create what my life is going to look like? What's the guiding light that I'm going after? Where am I going? So that's the number one thing. And what he shared on this episode, you can use those, strategies that he talked about, your values. What are my values to be able to guide you towards that balanced life? And I've seen that in so many aspects with so many entrepreneurs who are in Lifeonaire, that they're able to work the hours that they want, that they're able to live that vision, that they're able to live. In fact, like just a couple of days ago, we had our group call and one of my students just literally hit stage 4. How cool is that? And then it's so amazing to see people achieve that because it is possible. You just have to believe it for yourself.
Well, the other thing that we didn't talk about that struck me as well when he was talking about growth, like he has 7, soon to be 8 kids.
Yeah.
So this is another source of fear for people. Like maybe they have no kids and they're like, well, gosh, I only have to spend time with my spouse, my husband or my wife right now. But you introduce a child into that picture. You have to get better. You have to get better at your business because there's more things that are going to demand your attention that are going to be important to you that you're going to want to. I'm not saying you have to, but you want to. And now you take that one kid and now you have 3 or 5 or 7 or, whatever. We have people in life that are like 10, 11 kids. And so that's another aspect, another motivation, another point of inspiration for you to have to really give yourself the opportunity to level up so that you can enjoy all of these different things. And that growth to me it's not just in business, but it's in life. Like you want to take on more hobbies, more passions. You want to do that. Okay, awesome. But we got to make sure we're doing things, in a way that provides for that activity.
Right. That's why I always say, one of the first questions you need to ask yourself as you're growing is like, who do I need to become?
Yeah.
And you have to become that person first before you can actually do this A, B, C, and D. So, yeah, I love that episode. It was a great podcast. Yep. He was dropping some really good nuggets on here, and pick up the book.
So, check out the book. Also, if you've enjoyed this podcast, we'd love for you to give us a rating or a review. Give us a thumbs up. Let us know how we're doing. And that helps us reach more people. And together, we are changing the economic landscape of small business owners all over the world at this point. Dude, did you know we'll talk about this in another episode, but we have a significant amount of international listeners. Did you know that? It must be, I'm going to credit you for this one, man. They're like, you have global appeal.
Hold on. Did you just give me credit? Like, and give me credit,
we can edit
like
this out.
outside of between us talking?
We can have them
like,
edit it out later. We can have them edit it out. Don't worry. We'll just cover
Man, I need to today is July 20th. We're recording this. Okay, I'm going to have to write this down. You just publicly gave me credit. Holy cow. What?
All right, guys. We will see you next week with whatever this debacle of a podcast has become. All right, see you all.